The Nanosecond podcast is sponsored by CrookedRiverRadio.com. Crooked River Radio is an internet radio station that is live 24/7 playing rock and adult contemporary top 40 hits from the 60s through the 90s. You can find us on Live 365, Simple Radio, Roku, Radio Garden and even Alexa, as well as our website. Come on and join us on the Crooked River.
Welcome to the Nanosecond podcast. With your hosts, Erik Nannarone, Nick Gaglione, and Pat Morrow. Interesting topics, intriguing conversation, and entertainment. Erik, Nick, and Pat will be right with you.
Hello and welcome to the Nanosecond podcast. I'm Erik.
And I'm Pat. And Nick is on assignment.
Yes. So today we are talking to Brian Gates. He's the author of Project Renaissance. Hi Brian, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm good. What got you into writing?
What got me into writing is, I think we talked about this a second ago before we went live, is I grew up in Geauga County, and specifically in Parkman, Ohio. And I don't know how familiar you are with the area, but there's not a ton to do out there. So one of the first things I did as a kid growing up is I got my hand on books, because we got 3 TV channels, and then if you didn't want to hike in the woods, there wasn't anything else to do. So I got my hands on a ton of books, and, you just start devouring them. And I remember the reason I got into writing was because I'd finished these books, and I either didn't like the way it ended, or I thought I could write the ending better. So I'd take these books and I'd rewrite the endings of them in a way that I found more satisfactory. And then over time, that just kind of escalated into me writing full novels of my own.
Ooh. Hold on.
Let me interject something here.
Thank you. That would be...
Quickly, you mentioned Parkman. I know that city really well. There was a campground right as you turn off of 58 onto that main drag there. Is it 422, I think?
Yeah.
Go down about maybe a mile. The campground is on the right-hand or left-hand side. The reason I know that or knew that was back in the late 1980s, I did one of my best DJ bits out there. We hit the ground running. It was a Halloween party, and man, we rocked the top off that place. I've never forgot that.
Yeah, there's a lot of great campgrounds out there. There's I know one's Bass and Buck Adventures. You can go hunting, fishing. You can camp out there. And then obviously they have Nelson Ledges.
Yeah, the Ledges is the one I'm most familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
But that the Ledges thing is another thing entirely. I had friends that actually went to that campground. That's how I ended up getting the gig, and it was a lot of fun. It was a nice campground actually. When we were there was a couple of main buildings, and it had one just for partying in.
Oh yeah.
And I did a wedding out there, and I did three different gigs that were the worst of it was probably the teens and the adults put together, because you could never make everybody happy with what you were playing. This was back in the time of Tiffany and there was another girl there that I can't remember her name, but they were one-hit wonders. And the kids all wanted to hear Tiffany, and the adults wanted to hear Boot Scootin' Boogie and all that for...
Can't please that.
It was a lot of fun.
You can't. But, what are the most common, traps or snags that a aspiring writer runs into?
The biggest one for me, and I know a lot of the other writers I talk to, is there's kind of a misconception on the difficulty of getting into the publishing industry. I kind of had these preconceptions, when I was 18, where I was just starting to look around to see if I could get my first book published, that it wasn't that hard. You submit it to a couple publishers, and then one of them picks it up, they offer you a deal, and you go forward. But that's definitely not how it is. It seems like the industry's kind of gotten saturated to a point where if you have a book or you have an idea and you really want to pitch it or go forward with it, you almost have to be somebody that is either famous, or you have to know someone in the industry. I think I submitted my first manuscript that I officially published, was called One Shot. That was about 6 or 7 years ago now, and I probably submitted it to 30 or 40 publishers before one picked it up, and the one that picked it up was Mellinge Books. I got to deal with my first 2 books with them.
Have you ever considered publishing on or letting Amazon do the publishing for you, putting it together?
My next 2 books I did with Amazon, and that seems actually to be growing in popularity a lot because Amazon lets you keep more money.
We have had in the past. We've had another writer that I knew from high school, Beth Ann Roos. She writes children's books and some stuff about English royalty and stuff like that. And she's published, I think, 6 books through Amazon, 5 or 6 different books. And she's always said it's a lot easier than going to a publisher because you got more control on what you're doing.
It is a lot easier. Obviously, yeah, like you said, if you go to Amazon, they're not going to nitpick content. And you get to keep a lot more of the royalties too. Where with the publisher, at the end of the day, you might be getting 10 or 20 cents on the dollar. Whereas with Amazon, you're getting more like 60 cents on the dollar, or in that ballpark. It depends how they structure it, because they obviously have Kindle Unlimited, and people can read it through that. That's a different pay structure than if someone just buys the book. But yeah, you get a lot more freedom with it too. You can just, but there's also more responsibility. You have to design your own cover. You have to make sure it's edited properly. So there's a little bit more work on that end. But overall, it's a good experience. Yeah.
How many books do you have total?
Right now, I have 4 published. I have One Shot, and then I have The Final Strain, which was sort of an apocalypse-themed novel that I wrote back in 2019. And then my newest 2 novels are in the Project Renaissance series, subtitled White Wings and Door to Nowhere. And those are going to be a trilogy. And I'm working on the 3rd right now, and I'm hoping to get that out to the public by the end of this year, with any luck.
How do you come up with ideas for a book like that?
That's the favorite question I get, because I don't know. And one thing I love, they ask Stephen King this question all the time. I'm a big fan of this. And they ask him, how do you come up with these ideas? And he said, any writer that tells you where they get their ideas is lying, because none of us know. It's just little bits and pieces of information, I guess, that you hear around, and then you kind of put it together. I've always been interested in artificial intelligence, which right now in the news is actually a huge topic. And that was sort of a focal point of the Project Renaissance series, is artificial intelligence. And then you sort of work in this sci-fi thriller novel where you have these dangers that start to rise from it. So you kind of have an iRobot, Blade Runner vibe going on in these books.
I had I had read a couple of the reviews of your books. There was one there that kind of reminded me of The Body Snatchers, I think was the name of it, where it was you came up with a contact lens that could see, and you could put your AI anywhere you wanted to. In that movie, I think that was the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but I could be wrong. In that movie, in the movie I'm thinking of, they found a pair of dark sunglasses, and when they put the sunglasses on, they could see what everybody else in that, that was in this cult or whatever, could see what was, what was that? It had like writing on walls and don't do this, stay away from that, and this will kill you. And that was a pretty interesting theme for a movie. But
I'll have to watch that movie. I've never actually seen it, but that does sound really cool.
I think
it's kind of like, I think the idea, where I got the idea for the contact lenses to kind of augment reality was actually from Google Glass. You remember when that was a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you put that on, I just kind of turned that into a contact lens, which, I think there's actually people kind of trying to develop that technology right now. It's not available for commercial purchase as far as I know, but there are people trying to make it.
I'm going to have to look that movie up and see if I can watch it. I haven't, I'd seen the premise of it and I'd watched part of it. It's one of those, I don't have a whole lot of time. When I get a chance, I sit there and channel surf. And I just happened to channel surf across this thing one time, and we probably watched a half hour of it or so. But yeah, it's the way things go sometimes.
Time is hard to come by. I understand.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Erik,
do you try when you write the books to do original or like deliver to people kind of what they want in, like, I guess, type of what you're writing about?
That's I feel like I probably lean more towards writing what I want to write as opposed to what I think people will want to read, which maybe that's bad advice for any writer that's out there, because obviously you need to write what people are interested in. If you read any books being put out nowadays, to really be successful in the modern day publishing industry, you have to pick one of the two political sides and cater to it very strongly and make that message very clear, because people want to buy content that's going to reinforce what they already believe. And whereas I don't do that, I don't have like a political message in my book, or I don't go down any of those cantankerous rabbit holes. I try to write a good story, and I try to write something that people will find really interesting, something that'll keep them guessing, and something that'll just, that you can lose yourself in and get entertained by for, several hours.
That's really good, because there's so much, this country is so politically driven, one way or the other. We need an escape. So, it's good to hear that, that you don't try to fill people's minds with political agenda. It's drawing people away from, drawing away from politics and kind of opening up their imagination a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. I agree with you. To me, if someone has a really strong political message, like a modern day political message buried in their work, it actually distracts me from the story itself and kind of draws you out of it. At least that's kind of how I feel. So I try to avoid doing it.
I'll tell you with what even went on on TV today with this for use of a terrible word, the Trumpism stuff, I just cannot. Do you ever feel like you're in one of your books? I feel like I'm in a book somewhere. I really do. Watching this stuff and thinking, my God, this is so unbelievable. This stuff is so unbelievable to me. And, you've got your lemmings that follow this stuff around. How do they exist? I swear that I will never, I've swore before, I will never get into a political really discussion on any of these shows. But some of this stuff just makes you sit there and go, wow. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, and we've gotten to a point where it's very hard to talk about that stuff, because we've reached sort of a tribal point in the United States where it's no longer, this is what I agree with. People take those politics and they identify it as themselves. So when you counter address anyone's point on something they believe in, they don't view it as you have an alternate worldview, but rather you're attacking me as a person. And that's sort of the energy that comes off. And that's why, yeah, it can be tricky to talk about that stuff.
I've got several friends that are older. You know, I'm the 60s plus generation myself. I'm actually getting ready to turn 70 in a couple of years.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And my friends, especially the ones I've got from high school, some of these people are, you know, they're just completely on the side of that kind of politics, and they hate the Democrats. And, you know, I've never, it's hard for me to really agree or disagree with either party. Some of the stuff the Republicans have done in the past has been great. Some of it's been terrible. And on the other flip side of that, it's been that way with the Democrats too. You know, I've never been one to actually jump on one side of the fence or the other. I'm always try to keep my thoughts neutral. But watching some of this stuff, you just don't know. Anyway.
Okay. Did the first book that you had published change your style of or process of writing in any way, shape, or form?
Oh yeah, definitely. The first book I wrote that I actually got published, one shot, that I think that was 2016 that came out. That one was very freeform in the way that I wrote it, in the sense that I did not have an outline. I just kind of, you know, had a vague idea of what I wanted to do. And I kept it all up here, and I kind of had an idea of where I was going. But every chapter that I started, you know, there was sort of an idea of where I wanted the story to end, but I didn't have an idea what that chapter necessarily needed to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And now I go from a much more structured approach. Before I even start writing, I make a very comprehensive outline of the story with each chapter kind of laid out and how I want it to go. And I found that I think that makes my writing a lot better and more concise. And even now, going back and reading like the stuff that I've written 5-6 years ago, I find it cringy because, you know, I feel like I'm a better writer now. So I go back and read that stuff and I don't like it now.
Yeah, it's like, even going off with what you said, even like for me, listening back to when I started doing podcasting, like a few years back, I cringe listening to myself. I used to hate listening to myself. And somebody's like, you gotta be your biggest fan. So
I don't like to think my own voice either. If I ever hear this playback, I'm gonna hate the way my nasally voice sounds on record, you know?
Yeah. But did you have one author that you kind of looked up to, or that was your favorite author?
I was a big Dean Koontz fan. I read a lot of Dean Koontz. He was probably number one. A close number two would be like DJ McHale. He wrote the Pendragon series, which was like a huge staple of my childhood. Every time they released one of those books, you know, I was at the bookstore getting it. And I think, yeah, probably a lot of the style in my writing comes from those two.
Nice. Were you into the Harry Potter at all?
I didn't read them until later on. My wife is like a hardcore Harry Potter fan. And I didn't read them or even see. I saw like the first 3 movies, I think, when I was a kid, but I didn't see the rest of them. And I read all the books and saw the movies because, you know, she loved it. How about you? Have you ever?
When I was like 5th or 6th grade, but I think I read like 2 books, but I didn't really ever get into it. I wasn't one of those like super big Harry Potter fans that would go to the movie dressed up like.
Yeah.
No.
I've never dressed up going to a movie theater. And after they had that incident with I want to say it was The Dark Knight, where that guy went in dressed as the Joker, and he went in with a gun, and, you know, he did what he did. And I was like, I'm never dressing up to a movie. I'm never gonna wear any kind of costume and go into a theater.
Yeah, that's I don't understand why anybody does now, and I'm surprised theaters let people now because of that.
Yeah.
Well, a whole lot's changed since the that kind of stuff's went on too. You thanks to the pandemic and 3 years ago, it's you got a whole different theater audience now. It's not anywhere near as packed normally unless it's a really good one.
That's true.
I'm curious. You've mentioned some of the other sci-fi stuff? You a Mandalorian fan?
My buddy's been bugging me to watch that, and I have not got. And I love Star Wars. I watched the Obi-Wan series. I haven't gotten to the Mandalorian yet.
I'm going to tell you the Mandalorian series is probably the best of the of all of them so far, and I haven't watched. I think there's a Skywalker one that I haven't seen yet, but as far as the other ones, I've watched pretty much 2/3 of probably what's out there, and I've really got to where I enjoy that. The second year of the second series of the Mandalorian was probably the best so far. I'm into the third one. I think there's episode 6. I think for that one's going to drop tonight or tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I gotta watch it. I know it's good, and I've been putting it off. I probably will start it soon. I just finished that Amazon series, The Boys. I finished it the other night, so The Mandalorian's going to be my next
If you're going to
one.
do it, at least as far as the first two series, or I think it's through episode 8 and then 16. If you can binge watch it, because especially in the first round, all the stories link together really well, and if you can binge it, you'll get a lot more out of it.
I'll have to try to do that. It's hard to find time to binge anymore, but yeah.
How was The Boys?
I liked it. It's not for the faint of heart. Very, very graphic. Have either of you guys seen it?
I've heard of it. I haven't had a chance to see it yet.
I like it because it kind of shows the vainness of corporate America. And the idea is kind of like, what if corporate America owns superheroes? Like, superheroes are real, and corporate America essentially gets their hands on them. It's really good. It's a well-written show. I think Seth Rogen actually wrote a lot of it.
I think you're right, actually. Yeah.
And if you don't mind a little bit, it's a little gory, but if you don't mind that, yeah, it's a good show.
Are you into the Scream movies at all?
Not really. I think I've seen one of them, but typically I'm not like a big gore horror guy. I'll do like the psychological horror. I don't do as much of the gore because I saw like one of the Saw movies when I was like 17. I think it was the third one that like scarred me. I stopped. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I'm not into that either. One of my friends has seen it like
me in
5
the
times.
Twilight
I'm
Zone.
like,
Twilight Zone did that to me.
Did it? Yeah.
It ruined me. There was an episode that I was. You got to keep in mind, I was 6 and 7 years old when that show was on, and it was on after I was supposed to be in bed. So I'd sneak down to the door, crack the door open where I could see the TV, and I'd lay there and watch it. And there was an episode, I think it had William Shatner in it. He's every time he turns around, he's seeing and hearing voices and seeing things that aren't there. And he gets on this airplane, and he's flying. The airplane's flying along, and he's telling his compadre, I'm hearing these voices. There's something on the wing. There's something on the wing. And he opens up the shade, and there's this big old ugly monster. My butt got up off that floor, and I was in bed. There was probably wind behind me when that happened.
Went to bed with the lights on that night.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Never again. And I haven't really liked horror flicks since.
The Twilight Zone was good back in the day. I've seen a couple of those old episodes, the black and white ones. There was good writing. It pioneered the whole genre, really, that sort of psychological horror thriller.
I'll tell you, there was 2 or 3 of them from back then that really did that. Alfred Hitchcock was another one. That guy could. he is amazing writing. You know, his even for back in the day like that. It's hard to beat you got movies like North by Northwest, Rear Window, and some of those are classic movies. What do you think the let me change gears here. Do you think when you're writing, and I'm going to ask you another question as far as aspiring writers here in a minute, but as far as in your writing, do you get excited about writing or does it exhaust you?
Both. Sometimes it depends on the day. There's days when, if I'm at a point in the book that I'm having a lot of fun writing, yeah, definitely. I get really excited. I want to keep going and keep pushing through it. And then there's lots of other days where it's simultaneous. It can also feel like a complete slog. I'm trying to drink coffee or tea or something to get myself going and stay focused. Writing books, you definitely have to give up on the idea of immediate gratification because it takes so long, the whole process of writing and then editing, and then actually, getting it out there and getting it published. It's a lot of work.
How many times do you go through a book before you release it? How many times?
Do I read my own book before I release it?
I know if you're anything like I am, if I write a paragraph, I reread it 10 different times just to perfect the words and stuff like that in it. Do you do that?
Oh, yeah. When I was with Mellinge Books and I worked with their editors that they hired, I went through it no less than 4 times, usually 5 with like a final read through. And let me tell you what, you get sick of reading your own book by the 5th time. You just, and it's one of those things where sometimes, the 4th or 5th time you're going through and you're still finding little phrases or in paragraphs that you don't like and you want to rewrite them. And, you become your own worst critic in a way, and you really get almost cynical as you go through it. But it can be a hard process. And working with Amazon, I still go through it very thoroughly. Grammarly is a lifesaver. Grammarly is something that speeds up that process tremendously. So I can go through it like 2 to 3 times as opposed to 5 times, and I can, really get everything. And the nice thing with Amazon too, if you want to go back and like edit the manuscript that exists, you can do that. So if there's like a 1-star review that says, "Hey, you misspelled the word bazooka on page 32," I can go back and fix that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I know when I write, I'll read some. There's a difference between reading it in your head and reading it out loud to yourself or whoever's around you. Mm-hmm. And I have found more stuff by reading it out loud than I would have ever found by reading it. Your mind tends to skip over the errors and stuff like that a lot of times. And you find the same thing?
I do. Actually, I have a guy that reads my books for Audible on Amazon. His name's Steve White. Actually, he's a phenomenal guy. Really great guy, nice guy. And he does a great job at reading these books. And I find things when I listen to him. I'll listen to the way he says something. I'm like, that doesn't quite sound right. And I'll go back and I'll find, an error or something that I didn't, like the way it was written, and I can fix it that way.
That's cool.
Just for those of you just tuning in, we're talking to author Brian Gates. Give me 1 second to flip the page back. What was an early experience where you learned that language had power?
That's almost a hard question to answer because I remember a moment in, I think it was like 8th grade, we were assigned to write like short stories. And the teacher read them aloud in front of the class. And I can't for the life of me remember what I wrote about, but like, you know how 8th graders, like they're talking through class, they're kind of jumping around a little bit. They're, pre-adolescent. And I remember my story was the only one that everyone was quiet for. And they listened and they liked it. And I remember that was one of those, moments you go back to and say, why did you want to become a writer? And you like that. You like the idea of captivating people's attention that way. So that was one of the first times when it really kind of dawns on you. Just how impactful those words can be.
You ever had writer's block?
All the time, yeah.
How do you get rid of it?
I had a writing teacher when I was my freshman year of college named John Estes, and he was a big influence on me. And he said, and this is very common advice, but when you have writer's block, just start writing. And if you don't know what to write, just start writing. I don't know what to write. I have no idea what to put on this paper. And then as you type or use a pen or however you like to write, it's strange. Your mind just starts to kick into gear a little bit, and you kind of go retroactively. Your thoughts start getting going a little bit. And that's something that I've always used to help me. Don't just sit there and stare at the blank paper. Just start typing something.
Did you do any writing for like a school newspaper or anything when you were in high school, or was that not you?
I would have loved to do that. My high school didn't have a school newspaper.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. I went to a very small school. It was Cardinal High School, and I think there were like 83 kids in my graduating class. Very, very small. So there was no paper, and I think at one point I even suggested to the principal starting a paper, but it never really got any traction.
Wow. I didn't even think there was any schools that didn't have papers.
How big was your graduating class, Eric?
Oh, yeah, that's like 500.
500, yeah.
Yeah, we had about 2,000 students in my school. So
only 500 of them graduated.
Yeah, so they got a nice school out there.
Yeah, but yeah. Pat, do you have anything? Because I'm drawing a blank.
I'm not saying that anybody on this show has a big ego or anything, but do you think a big ego has either an adverse or a positive effect on writing?
Maybe. It could be helpful, I guess, in a way, to have a confidence in yourself, to believe that you can do it. Where that line of confidence turns into arrogance and then sort of turns into an ego, that can be harmful in the sense that you're not willing to compromise. And I think anyone that thinks, especially in the writing industry, that they know everything, so you'll get these writers that, when it comes to editing, they don't want to change anything, or they don't want to adapt anything, or they're never happy with the way their cover is designed. When you start to get people like that, they can be tricky to work with.
Is there a novel out there that you've read that you say, wow, this one's really underappreciated, that, more people should maybe read?
Well, I mentioned the Pendragon series, that young adult series that I read as a kid. That sort of flew under the radar for the most part, but phenomenal young adult book. If you know anyone in, the 10 to 17 range looking for something to read. I'm trying to think. A lot of the books that I've read that I really like, they are very popular and very famous. Like Stephen King's The Stand was, that sort of inspired me to write The Final Strain, because I just thought that was like the coolest book ever when I read it. And Dean Koontz, I adore the Odd Thomas series, but again, that got turned into a movie that has tons of recognition.
All right, I'm going to take I'm an aspiring writer, and I actually really am. I've thought about writing a book on the actual internet radio history and actually what I've went through to set this station and these podcasts and everything up. I could write a book easily on that. I could probably knock out 500 or 600 pages easy. What advice can you give me?
Well, 500 or 600 pages is probably too long. People are leaning more towards shorter books these days. And I mean that a lot. Like if you can break that into 2 books or condense it down to like 200, 250 pages, that would actually probably help a lot.
Really?
Yeah, I know the final strain was the longest book I ever wrote, and my publisher yelled at me for it, and she wanted to break it into 2 books, but I didn't want to. I was stubborn there. And I think that was 120,000 words, which probably ended up being like 300 or 400 pages.
Huh.
Yeah. That's not to say you couldn't publish something with 500 pages. Would you try to publish it on Amazon, do you think?
I'm thinking that, yeah. I've seen
it's not a bad platform to start it, get it out there.
The thing that I think I could, as far as the interest in it, there's all the time when you're on social media, you're always seeing stuff like, how do I get this started, or why does this happen, or what platform should I use to put my radio station on, or, and I've been through all that. Been at this almost 3.5 years now, as far as on our own. I've had another 1.5 years of experience before that. And, they always tell me, when I actually do teaching in amateur radio too. I've taught classes on how to become a ham. And they always tell you, if you're going to you want to learn your subject, live through it and teach it. And, the book writing would probably be my way of teaching it. But I've actually really thought about doing it that way.
I know I'm sure there's a market for people that would want to buy it. My brother actually was going to go into broadcasting. I think he got like an associate's in broadcasting, and he never really pursued it that far. He changed career paths and he did something else, but he was always passionate about it. But I think a big part of it was he didn't know really where to go or what to do. So yeah, I think a lot of people would be interested in that information.
Plus, I could take and add some personal, some of the comedy stuff that goes on around this house when we're trying to do a show, or Erik will come in with some historical bit of, or historical. I mean historical, hysterical, whatever bits, and I get him so frustrated he can't even look at the camera.
Yes.
Or we'll have a story about we've got this other crew guy that comes in on one of the other shows. He in about 3 minutes he told his whole life story on his sex life. It was flipping hysterical. This is the same guy that drives through Uranus, Missouri, and actually stops and does a live shot from
That was probably the best time on that show.
But,
I'll have to try to find that episode and listen to it.
That was.
I'll find it somewhere and send it.
It's still on
send
Facebook.
Me the link to that. I gotta hear that.
It I've had a lot of life experiences with this stuff, and it would probably behoove me to write about it. Even I wouldn't actually expect to make money off of it or anything like that. But
you could make money. One thing you could do with your experience in broadcasting, you could read it yourself for Audible. And you could sign up for the Audible.
I never thought of that.
Audible Plus, you could read your own book, and then you don't have to hire that out or share the royalties or anything like that. You get 100%. So that would be a great way to go about that as well.
When you do something like that, can you insert clips and stuff like that? Like if you were doing a podcast or something like that, like the news does when they're going to a separate, like for instance, with this train wreck that happened over here in Palestine, you would have people, your narrator would come on and talk about it, and then they'd cut to a clip and tell you what they needed to tell you. Can you do that in the Audible writing like that?
I'm not terribly sure what rules Audible has. That's why I hire someone else to do it. I'm not super familiar with it. But I don't see why you couldn't do that.
Yeah, that would be an interest. There's several ideas I've got that could make that pretty interesting. I'm going to have to sit down and do it. I'm going to retire one of these days.
Just another thing to add to your list there, Pat.
I just taken, and Erik, this is for you, buddy. If I can find it.
Oh no.
You keep using language like that, and you're going to find yourself out of a job.
And that, my friends, is the story of Erik.
Yes.
If he doesn't hear that once or twice a podcast, he feels like I'm sick or something.
I feel like I'm in the wrong place.
The FCC is going to knock on your door and yell at you.
Yes. Exactly. Well, we're not really FCC regulated, so.
That's nice. You have the freedom of the internet. You're not on the waves. Yep.
Do you have any books that are unfinished or and you just haven't done yet?
The one I'm working on right now that's not finished is going to be the augmented reality game, which, you guys are the first ones that I actually heard that. I haven't announced that title anywhere else, so you get the exclusive.
Oh, sweet.
And that's I'm going to aim for like November, December for that. And that's like halfway done. So then that'll be out, and then the trilogy will be complete, and I can move on to something new.
Sounds like fun. And that's pretty much what I would do. That I actually retired from Chrysler back in 2009.
Okay.
And I retired at 54. And since I did that, I made myself a bunch of bills and had to go to work again for a living for a while. But 2 years ago I retired again. And when one thing slows down, the other thing speeds up. Is the way this retired life is treating you. And I don't know how I ever had time to work. I really don't.
Staying busy is not a bad thing.
That's the name of the game. Anyway, Erik, I'll turn it over to you. You want to? I'll tell you what, we're going to do a segment on the weather for tomorrow. If you want to hang in, I actually have to drop off. If that's all right. Oh, that's fine too.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Thank
I
you so
really
much
appreciate you guys having me on the show. It was really fun.
We appreciate you coming in. You're always welcome here. If you want to introduce a book or whatever, you're more than welcome to come in.
Hey, maybe when the next one comes out, I'll give you guys a call.
That'll
okay,
work.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening, Brian.
Thanks again, guys.
Thanks.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
And that, my friends, was Brian of Brian Gates of Brian Gates Books.
Author. Yes.
You want to do this weather segment then, or?
Yes, let's do this weather segment. Well, wait. First, because I didn't get to mention this before we introduced Brian. Tomorrow we are having a special edition of the Nanosecond podcast with Matt Fontana, host of ESPN Cleveland Tonight on ESPN 850 WKNR. That show will be happening tomorrow at 2 p.m.
And I can't wait.
Yes.
That's going to be an interesting podcast there. Not that all of ours isn't interesting, but that'll be above average.
Yeah.
Anyway, as we were talking about the weather for tomorrow, if you're in the Midwest or the Northeast, you probably know what's going on in everything between Iowa and Pennsylvania. We are about to have a weather day for tomorrow. We'd actually had one last Saturday that was one of the stranger ones I've ever seen, and I've been doing this stuff for a while. But what happened, we actually had some storm damage and it knocked power out across a large portion of Ohio, and especially my county, the county that we're in. They've got a similar event coming for tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and put...
If anybody's listening, please comment on
Ellie said that she didn't have sound for some reason, so it evidently did that.
Okay.
I want to say monkey balls.
Because I think we had people commenting on the Twitch saying we had no sound.
Well, we should have it now, but I got to get back to the presentation that I had here. I think that was it. All right, can you see that again?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to make just a couple of quick comments here now that I know you can hear me. Never dawned on me I had to add something to this thing. I thought it did it by itself. Going back, the most important things I'm going to show you here are on just a couple of screens. This is the enhanced risk for this graph here, or these pictures here, are actually going to show you where they're expecting the highest amount of wind tomorrow. On the right-hand side, this is where they're expecting hail, and this is enhanced risk for hail. So you've got a 15 to 30% chance of hail anywhere in this yellow area. That's a lot higher than anything we've had recently. We're also going to have temperatures above 80 for the Akron area. The winds will probably average somewhere about 30 to 35 miles an hour, but there will be gusts. When this is going to happen is going to be, if you're in northwest Ohio, you can expect this stuff between noon and 7 p.m. By then it should pretty much be moved out. As far as the other side, as far as our area goes, you're looking from 3 to 10 p.m. I'm thinking that probably at about 3 or 4 you're going to see a round, and then by 7 or 8 you're going to see another round of this stuff. They're expecting hail, high winds, and all kinds of stuff. So all I can say is just be aware of the weather, because it's going to come, and you're probably going to see a lot of it. Hopefully not, but and also stay weather aware. And if you're a ham radio operator, get on the radio and let me know what you're seeing.
And for those who didn't hear my question, because I feel like this is important, all this stuff that is comes from the National Weather Service comes actually originally from the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma. I feel like that's important, and I don't know if that went over the first time when I asked Pat that question.
I don't know if it did or not.
But like I said, I just...
Actually, it's the NOAA site is actually the place where most of the forecasting comes from. Your National Weather Service places do the written forecast, but when you're talking any kind of length or anything like that, that usually comes from the SPC, which is NOAA. So with that, I guess we can wrap it up.
Reminder, tomorrow, 2 p.m., we will be back here in this place, wherever you're listening, with... I love when I fluster myself. Okay, restart that. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Nanosecond Podcast. We will be interviewing Matt Fontana from ESPN Cleveland.
We don't have, those guys that start shit, but we got guys that don't run from shit.
Yes, we do.
Sorry.
We sure do.
No anchovies, please.
Sorry, Eric, I had to do that.
That one didn't fit. I feel like the other one did.
Oh my God!
That fit.
Let's just fit sound bites now. Let's fill the clothes with sound bites.
Why not? What better way to end the show?
Yes. No, there's no better way to end the show.
I promise, at least except for one that I can think of, I won't use any sound effects tomorrow. Because I respect our guest.
I actually kind of want to know what that one is.
It'll probably be the horn.
Oh,
And when we announce him, I'll have to do something like that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But tomorrow, 2 p.m., with Matt Fontana from ESPN 850 WKNR. With that, I say it's time to be like a hockey player and get the puck out of here.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Pittsburgh! Pittsburgh sucks! Pittsburgh sucks! Pittsburgh sucks! Pittsburgh sucks!
I decided I want to restart the show again. Let's run this for about another 45 minutes or so. Is that all right with you, Eric? Oh, darn. I think he left. The reason I was going to do that is because Trump...
No, I muted.
The reason I wanted to do that is because Trump's talking, so we might as well just do that. That'll piss Ellie off.
I mean, yeah, we can.
She come on and told me I was being considerate so she could go watch Trump. So, anyway, I'm out of here. I'll see y'all later.
Okay, see y'all tomorrow.
See y'all tomorrow.